Good morning, guys. Welcome in to another episode of the Train to Win podcast. I am your host, Blake Bernard, and this morning we are met by our wonderful and honestly the lovely Gina Billson. Gina is actually the parent of one of our athletes at Grindhouse Strength and Conditioning. They've been with us for going on. We just hit our 1 year anniversary, didn't we? Huh? Yeah. And we've had the pleasure of training her daughter Ani as well as her oldest Owen, who both are very accomplished athletes. And Gina is a counselor and a psychologist, one that does awesome work with our youth. And well, I don't think you really discriminate between ages, do you?
No,
none. And she recently got out of the school system. We're going to talk about it today, okay? But before we do, we are sponsored by Covenant Coffee. And I got to plug these guys because they're doing awesome work. They actually just bought my sister's coffee shop, Cloud9 Coffee, and it was an awesome acquisition, a great move for Bakersfield. These guys provide awesome opportunities to foster youth in the 661, really providing them careers to those who may not have had families that like raised them in a favorable way, or maybe provide them opportunities coming out of the household at 18. When they get kicked out of the system, where do they go? Randy and the boys at Covenant Coffee do a great job of providing those guys a future and a way to get them on their feet as they enter the real world. So guys, it's Hope in a Cup. Go grab you some. All right, Gina, on to you. There's no reason to be nervous, girl. This is gonna be good.
Well, yeah.
Here we go.
Randy's cool.
You know Randy?
Yeah. Well, a long time ago, back in my early days, I was working with a therapist, Steve Crouch, and he and Randy were tight. Mm-hmm. So we did a lot of community stuff with that group. But I haven't seen Randy in a really long time.
I've never met the man. I hear nothing but amazing things about him. He just got a heart for God.
Yeah.
And his ministry, it's one that I can get behind. My wife and I are entering into the foster adoption process right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, so obviously those are my own heartstrings are being pulled, but
yeah,
something I think just about anybody can probably relate to if you've ever been a kid or have kids, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So Gina, today we want to talk about kind of like I like spending at least or I should say no more than 30 seconds on your story. So then we can get to the really hard questions. Okay. So why don't you tell our audience, if they're not familiar, where you come from, where your career started, and where you're at now?
Okay. So I want to clarify, I'm not a psychologist. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Technicality again.
You're good. So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I have been practicing since the year of 2000. And so I started out working with children and family services for about a strong 14 years. And then when I started doing private practice in 2008, I focused on everybody. So individual, couples, families, love teens, love young adults. That was my thing for a long time. Mm-hmm. And now I'm passionate about working with people who want to come in and just look at themselves, their relationships, and help them navigate through life. That's important because a lot of times working with the schools and those types of agencies, you get clients who are kind of forced to come in, and there's some resistance there, and it's, there's a lot of buy-in.
Absolutely.
And so there's a lot of work in that. It's fulfilling, of course, but now I get to focus on people who really want to come in and they're ready to work.
So when you talk about work, are you talking about behavior change? Like, what is the biggest thing that you need that buy-in to achieve?
Well, it's just the motivation to look within, right? Sure. So a lot of times people come in and they're like, I have problems at work. I have relationship problems, parenting, marriage, and whatever I'm doing, I'm stuck. It's not working. So then they're willing to come in and look at what they are doing. And then from there, they can explore what are the hurdles. And that's the most important piece, because if you're not willing to kind of look at everything on the table, and we are sometimes our hardest critic, and we are perfectionists in a lot of ways, and we are resistant to change. Mm-hmm. So when we're ready, we're more open to address those things.
Do you find that introspection is common in people, or is it really hard to come by?
No. So I think when a person makes a phone call, they're ready.
Sure.
And if they make the phone call and they come in the first session, that first session is so important because you're either going to lock in with a connection. They're going to feel empowered just in that first session. And if the connection's great and they feel safe and safety in there, they're going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
So that first session is always the most important session that we as clinicians have. And then they're ready, they're motivated, but it's that first phone call. And once they make that phone call, I think they're ready to come in and start stirring things up.
I love that. Sounds a lot like our first meeting with your kids.
Yeah.
It's like, can I scare you guys away, please? And then if you, like you said, if you lock in, if you make it past the first one and ask for more, we know it's a good fit,
Yeah.
right? So I find that like people have to, the thing about behavior change is they have to be, it's kind of like the old adage, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Mhm.
They don't start reaching out for those resources until they know they have a problem. It's like the first step in AA, right?
Mhm.
It's the first step for really changing your changing your life, not by trying to change your circumstance, but how you deal with them.
Mhm.
So you're a mother of two,
Yes.
both are athletes, and I've had the pleasure of working with both. They're some of my favorite kids. I'm very curious, and I said this on last week's show too, success leaves clues. What things do you do, or do you recommend to other parents? What did your house look like, in their formative years to set them up for who we now know as, Ani and Owen?
So, okay, I've never been asked that question. So thank you for asking that because it gives me time to reflect on that. So I think when Jason and I met, my husband, he was very active in his life. I mean, he played adult soccer in adult soccer leagues. He surfed, he worked out. We met in a gym, and I have always ran and worked out. So when we had kids, we were taking them with us on all of our outdoor activities, snowboarding, surfing, road biking, just whatever we could do. We love the outdoors and we love being active. I think our kids that was their environment since they were toddlers, and they were on the back of a bike or in a running, the Bob strollers.
Yeah.
And they were just enjoying being outside and doing those things. And so Jason was playing adult men's soccer. And so Owen and I would go watch him. And then Jason comes from a huge soccer family. So we got Owen in when he was 4 years old into individual training with Lorenzo Mogania. Amazing. And he started doing private training with him. And that was Owen's door open to soccer. Ani was in a car seat on the soccer field.
Sure.
And she grew up on a soccer field, and she was with me in a running stroller as well. And I just think modeling those things to your kids and seeing you active, they don't know any different.
Yeah.
And when you're in the backyard and you're playing outside and you're doing those activities and you're having fun as a family, there's bonding. There's just so much support in that and fun. It's fun, right? So I think they just wanted to participate just by us modeling that to them. Now, Jason and I are taxing, so we don't get to be as active as we used to be, but we still do what we can.
The torch has been passed.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's so interesting. Like, that's how they start. But then, like, I'm not looking, well, I take that back. It's kind of it's catch-22. I'm looking forward to it, but it's also going to stretch me as a parent, figuring out how to teach my kids how to handle things like wins, like losses, like you're a volleyball parent, coaching, roster politics, all the stuff that running a strength conditioning facility, I get earfuls of every single day.
Yeah. How
do you teach your kids life lessons through like the adversity they face in sport? How do you frame those to get the outcome that you want? Maybe like, to mold the little girl and the little boy in front of you into great men and women later on.
Mm-hmm. So our go-to thing is, has always been, once you start, you don't quit, right? Unless there's a huge reason that obviously affects their mental, emotional health. That's important. So we have always been very supportive of their coaches. We same with their teachers. So Jason and I take the stand like your coaches to be respected. We will always support your coaches. You can come home and you can vent to us, and we can talk about that as a family. But your coaches, we support them. We look at the big picture, and then we'll go from there. There's been plenty of times where we've sat down and we've been frustrated. We're trying to figure things out. And that's when we all go into prayer about something that we have no control over. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, can I talk about that part?
Yes.
Okay. So I am a huge, one of my main things I do as a parent is I'm always praying ahead. Like, Father, you look out for my kids, what coach they're going to have, what teacher they're going to have, and whatever you bring to the table for them as their coach, teacher, mentor, whoever, grindhouse, right? Please let this be you leading that way. Because if you line up that person for them, then I'm always going to know that there's a reason why there's adversity in those moments, right? Like I can get frustrated with a coach, but I'm supposed to be right here, right? There is a lesson in this. And the biggest lessons that my kids have learned so far as, both now young teens, have been in sports, have been for my son. I can write chapters on adversity in soccer. And we always feel powerless in the flesh with club, coach, whatever. But I always know that Owen and Ani are going to land wherever God is going to land them. I don't care. So it's like, whatever they're going through, if we pray about it and they learn to surrender, whatever's happening now, it's in the outcome that we're focused on. And if I can get them to do that, right, they're learning how to surrender and they're learning how to live by faith. In the human form of that, it's such a powerless feeling, right? Showing up, not being seen by a coach, maybe your coach not seeing the potential, maybe the coach not liking the way you look, you act, you respond to other teammates. I mean, we all have coaches that see us in ways that the next coach might not.
Sure.
Right. So I tell both my kids, you have these coaches for a season and there's a lesson in it because I've already prayed for it. So we just go through, we just, challenge that and wait.
Yeah. Isn't faith the expectancy of things not seen, right? And so you're just expecting that the 100%. People in their life, this is all going to work out for their good. It's all going to, lead to their fulfillment in some way. I love the praying ahead principle. That's 100%. Huge. And honestly, you're highlighting something that honestly, you're going to make me weepy because I think I have to do a better job of that now. That's gold for a parent. So don't withhold any of the faith-based stuff. Like that is exactly what we're here for. Okay. But I am curious, like the hard thing about being an athlete when you're dealing with the subject matter that we're talking about here, it's not a one-day prayer. It's not a one-day moment of strength or, God give me courage in this thing. It's every day. It's walking out, all through school, you're probably thinking about it. In your relationships, you're talking about it. You go to practice and you're living it. And you do that 7 days of the week for as long as the Lord wills it, right? So how do you encourage your kids to, I guess, stay faithful and remain, obedient in those times of like, man, those seasons where it just feels like it stretches on forever? Because, coaches aren't there for just a week. They're the team they're on, the whatever. If they're going to finish what they started, it might be a season, months, a year.
So I always joke around that with my friends that I never knew that sports and the events that happen and the dynamics would take such a forefront role in my life as a parent.
You're in it, baby.
So, with soccer and just locally here, we've had so much turnaround when we stayed in town. And, that's all adult level issues, right? It's club, it's politics, it's teams, it's the dynamics on the team. And so you could be rolling, everything's fine, and then something turns over and you feel like you're starting all over again, right? And it's just constant change that disrupts your family, because school's important. Don't get me wrong. Like, homework, that's the other half of it. But when you're investing in your kids are investing their time in all the private training,
right?
All the late nights eating dinner, late nights doing homework, and then something goes wrong and your kids are upset or you're upset. It's almost like God's like, I'm right here. Like, I'm right here. You guys are stressing, and it's so silly, right? In the big picture, like, and then he's constantly, I feel like he's like, I'm right here. And then once we realize that, it's like, oh yeah, peace. It's just peace. And then you're ready to do it again the next day. And I think my Owen, at being almost 17, I think he has now become so used to, adversity, prayer.
Wow.
Release. If I see that he's upset, okay, you gotta take it to God, right? Yeah, I know. And that's his thing. Ani, that comes naturally to her in her walk with God.
Do you think that's because she watched him go through it before? Like the second born is almost the beneficiary of the oldest?
Absolutely, yes.
So tell me, like, what your biggest struggles have been as a counselor dealing with youth. Maybe not your struggles, excuse me. What are the biggest issues that you see our kids walking through? And what's the one thing that you wish would be happening in the home to maybe circumvent that?
I think I would say that's a very difficult question, because there's so many layers to that.
What's the one that you're passionate about? So, like, we know, like, I'm only 31 and my parents are, 30 years older than me. And we all see today's youth differently. And I see all the opportunity in front of them. I was a millennial, so I had people older than me looking down upon me as like, oh, we're the first generation with cell phones. And so we were probably, we had a whole set of problems that they didn't have, right? The kids today have TikTok and all sorts of things that are their issues. And, 60-year-olds see that a different way than we do. Now, I deal with a lot of 10 to 18-year-olds at Grindhouse. I think the largest, the biggest problem facing our country's youth is a lack of confidence, and really just knowing who they are as children of God. But even if they're raised in a church, I don't think that's getting preached enough, that they're literal princes and princesses coming from royal bloodline, called to be something absolutely amazing for the kingdom. I don't see a lot of kids walking like that. And I see them getting beat down by what they see on their phones. And I see them getting beat down by the things they see on campus and whatever's going on in their sport. I don't see enough parents picking them up the way that you do in your home. And those are the things that I'm passionate about improving at Grindhouse, not always knowing for certain if they're getting that kind of support at home. Is there something that you've found in your practice that you're passionate about? It's like part of your mission statement you want to help improve in the kids that you work with?
Well, okay. So, yes. I mean, I think that parents putting, especially 10 to 18-year-old, and I would even say with phones and electronics, like 8 to 17, just more parental involvement in what their kids are looking at, what their kids are doing, and just being more child focused in that sense of that there is such a pull in our culture to stretch our kids in ways that we didn't even think about 10, 20 years ago, right? So what I think my child may be looking at or being exposed to on their device could be something completely different.
Mhm.
So I just think being child-centered in your family and constantly looking out for different paths that they're taking, I would say that would be the number one. And then from that, what do we need to do as a family to get everything back on track? Right.
Sure.
So then that comes in like traditional family values, family rules, but that's like a family looking within, like, what can we do to kind of lock up the family to like protect,
Yeah.
Our children against where the world wants to pull our kids.
Yeah. I've always felt like, and again, I don't have a degree in this, okay, but just anecdotally speaking, looking back at the way I was raised, the issues that I had, and then now being a parent and seeing, it's kind of funny, like once you own like a yellow Volkswagen Beetle, you're automatically aware of all the yellow Volkswagen Beetles on the road. When you become a parent, you automatically start looking at what every other parent's doing. And I feel like, kids have this unique ability, and maybe just all humans in general, for filling voids. But I think that the way that they're raised helps influence the things they choose to fill those voids with. So if they don't get the attention they need in the home, they're going to fill that void with something else. If their father wasn't around, maybe there was a single mother household, whatever, they're going to fill that void any way they can. If they didn't get, I don't know. I remember when my kids were super young, tummy time and like skin to skin was really important. They're going to fill that void with something else. It leaves gaping holes in their development. Do you see that in your own practice, or am I totally crazy?
No, they're absolutely. So parents are so much more busier now than they were. And I mean, we can look at stats and see like divorce rate, substance abuse. I mean, those have all risen drastically. So the family unit is just very different now, right? We as a culture have normalized a lot of things to kind of mimic what a traditional family would look like. And sure, they work. I mean, they may work, they work, and people make them work. They do their best. You can influence a family dynamic in any form or fashion, and it could be successful if everybody is person-centered, right? If everybody feels important and everybody is supportive of one another, that can happen. Aside from that, my views are a little bit different. My traditional spiritual faith-based is different. But if I'm talking about just everyone in general, I think that yes, a lot of important factors are missing from our family units.
100%. And of course, we'll never be perfect, right? Like, even if you try your absolute hardest, like I've got a daughter that, like, if I can't, she puts her hand on my arm to get my attention when we're in the middle of conversation trying to be polite. And if I don't respond to her in 10 seconds or less, she thinks like she's not important. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So like, try as I might, it's not always going to work out. But I think that you and I both agree that we would hope that our kids would fill those voids with Jesus.
Yes.
Whatever brokenness in there is there, and there's going to be brokenness somewhere, right? That Jesus would come in and be the glue to kind of bring that stuff back together. What advice do you give to parents, fathers or mothers, for things that they should focus on? When you say person-centered, what does that mean?
So, one of the things I've learned as a parent is that I am not always my best, right? So a couple of years ago, I went through a time where, I lost 2 significant people in my life and my world turned upside down. And I still had to get up. I still had to make lunches. I still had to get the kids to school. I still had to do all the things that I needed to do. And for 1 year of that, I was numb in survival mode. And the second year, and I'm not my best self, right? So my kids get to see me not perfect, but it's the turnaround in that I can go to them and I can take accountability for, like, that wasn't cool of me, or I took some stuff out on you that you didn't deserve. And, and I'm working through my own stuff and modeling that with my kids.
Whoa.
Because they need to see that we go through adversity and hardship as well. But it's how we model that with them, connect with them on that. And then I get to hear their feedback, which is always usually so supportive. I understand, Mom. But it's like when they are going through something and we talk about it later, right? Because there's usually like, a discussion, heated, non-heated, whatever. But if there's a problem, we're connecting and communicating about that and learning from it and growing it. And usually, most times, because there is an open discussion about it, my kids will take responsibility for what they did. But it comes from me, and it's modeling. So I think that if those are things that are important to a family, to like, we all have bad days. We mess up all the time. But it's how we recover and move forward is so important. I don't know if that answered your question.
100% it does.
Okay.
So modeling vulnerability reciprocates
Absolutely,
vulnerability.
Yes.
I mean, we just want our kids to talk to us, right?
Yes. Yes.
I don't look forward to the day when like my daughter's 12, 13 starts going through the changes,
Oh,
and
man.
I'm like, just please talk to me. I
Yeah.
hope that I'm like fostering that environment now when she's 6.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To prepare us for that. So that really spoke to me. There's one thing I want to talk about, and we're going to go back to the sports thing for just a second, because this is something that I deal with regularly in my gym facility. And I don't think I have the perfect answer to. This is actually something I've recently bought a ton of books on, and that's performance anxiety. It's in the workplace. Lord knows it's in school and sports. And like you said, sports have this unique way of like teaching our kids lessons that, it's an imperfect environment. It's chaotic. And so what better training ground to teach our kids life lessons if we can kind of maybe rein in their thoughts a little bit and put on some blinders to focus on what's really happening, either in the spiritual or seeing the long game and how this serves a divine purpose in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Performance anxiety is an interesting one, though. Mm-hmm. In the world of, mental health is in the spotlight all the time. And, what's being propagated in popular media right now is like your feelings are your own, you're totally entitled to them, and however you feel is how you feel, damn everybody else kind of a deal. Mm-hmm. When you're anxious about that upcoming competition, or, my wife was a track and field athlete, I was not, but hearing from her and her friends how they would get anxious to the point of throwing up, vomiting, like freaking out, they had all these weird rituals and stuff prior to that stuff. I never dealt with that. But when you have someone that they are so anxious it takes them out of their game, how do you get them back in it? And how do you encourage those kids, I guess, so they don't lose their minds in the meantime?
So if you're an athlete, you're doing the training, right? And you're practicing day in, day out. Your body has muscle memory. Your body knows what to do. So if you're trained up and you have done the things that are in your control, then you can look at, I know what to do. So why am I tripping right now? Yeah. Why am I second guessing? And the fun part of it is, as a clinician, is we get to explore that, right? Yeah. We get to say, like, what is it about that? And usually it's just nerves getting ahead of you, and you can't catch up and like contain it. It's just gotten away, right? But I have several, including my kids who are both very different, I've worked with lots of athletes who have different reasons why they have performance anxiety. And, but it all goes back to feeling like they're not going to perform like they want. And so when you remind them of like, but you've trained, right? Yes. You know what to do. Yes. And the things that are in your control, your diet, your rest, your hydration, you've done those things, right? Okay. You got it. Like you are the executive manager of your brain. Tell tell yourself you're going to do it. That looks so much easier than it actually is.
100%.
Right. But it is just the, what is it? What would I want to say? It's just the anxiety that goes with it. But when you tell yourself, I know what to do. So like this is one of my favorite ones. I had a track runner, and he was a freshman, and he was going into his school, and they knew that by the time he was a senior, he was going to be cracking records.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was running, and then some of his times weren't coming out the way he wanted. And he's like, I go in and I just feel like my body's tired. And I'm like, okay, so what did you do for training? And his training all week was amazing. Numbers, amazing. But he wasn't thinking about racing. He was just training. Mm-hmm. So like, okay, your mileage is in, your time's in, your diet's in, your sleep's in. Go tell your body to do it. Mm-hmm. Let go do it. So it's just, I think, natural and pretty common that happens, but it's learning how to manage your brain.
100%.
It's like imprinted with like, okay, there's time from after training to the race time. What am I going to do? Oh, think about what's all going to go wrong.
Right.
Well, what if it all goes right? So it's just reframing those thoughts and then trying to focus on, I've done everything I can and I'm going to go do it.
I love that word reframing because it's the same picture. You're just literally like tweaking a little bit. Maybe it's a little off kilter and we just got to like put a level on that thing and get it looking right again. Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is confidence comes from preparation and trusting your training, right?
Yes.
The flip side of that is too, you would, I hope, know who it is that you're sitting in front of, right? I deal with a lot of kids as well. The ones that I lose sleep over are the ones you just described. I'm like, dude, you did everything right. Now let's just flip that switch in your brain and just go run, you know? On the flip side of things, there are a lot of our kids as well that have the opposite problem. They're not confident because of the preparation they didn't put in. And I'm like, you know, you really have to prepare in such a way where it would be unreasonable logically for you to fail in this moment. Mm-hmm. If you actually put in the work. If you didn't, then it's totally logical, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes it identifies, you know, maybe a gaping hole in their own preparation that we need to shore up.
Yeah.
So you've got some notes here. You came really prepared. And I really like that. I'm sure there's something that you want to talk about, something that I'm always interested to know kind of what's piqued your interest lately. What's been in the forefront of your brain? What's been percolating? What's got your interest? What's got you fired up right now in your own practice? And take us down that rabbit hole for a second.
Okay, well, I feel like, so I want to go back to like what I kind of personally went through 2 years ago. So I'd been practicing since, like 2000, like I said, and I have had some experience my first major event was when 9/11 happened. Okay. I worked with a clinic and we flew out 6 days after 9/11 happened, and we went through working with individuals who had been affected by that, like companies that worked around that had seen things happen and experienced that. So I was just right out of school, just became licensed at that time. I can't remember. That's a long time ago. So I thought I knew what I was doing. Okay. And then when I worked with the Kern High School District, we had lots of things that came up as crisis, you know, like things happened to a student and we would show up and we would provide some crisis counseling for for different events. And so this whole time that I had been practicing, I thought that I had done pretty well felt confident in how I was practicing and what I knew. But then when I went through my own personal things a couple of years ago, and I started to really feel something that I'd never felt before. Like I had gone through bad times, I had gone through anxious times, but when people would come in for depression or anxiety, I was doing textbook therapy. Like, oh, this is this, do this. Oh, I had my recipes for everything until I went through that.
Whoa.
And then I was like, this is what I didn't understand when I was working with others. This is what that feels like. Oh, depression can feel exhausting, physically 100% exhausting, to the point where it's actually really difficult to wake up, to get out and move. Anxiety, where the thoughts are just running rampant and I'm exhausted from just thinking, right? And so I'm like, oh, this is what my clients were talking about. And it humbled me, because I was operating out of a textbook, and now I'm living through that, and I can connect with people. And so I used to practice from different theories, and thought I knew what I was doing. And now I have come back to centeredness, where I look at exactly what the client is going through, thinking, feeling, and just knowing why, right? If I look at them like, oh, you have sadness, do this, and then go a little bit deeper, like, okay, you had major change in your life, let's focus on this. That's how I used to practice. Now I'm like, well, what made you that way? And why were you this way? And I can understand and unpack all those years with this client and why they're thinking, feeling, and being, and just being more impactful to the person, much more than I was before, I guess.
Sure.
Even though I don't like saying that, but it's true. What I went through has humbled me, and I see things under a different lens now. I just feel my connections just different, because I'm looking within, and each person is different. 2-3 people can go through the same depression or anxiety symptoms, but they're all going to be very different in the treatment, And so, yeah.
Do you think that's made you a more effective listener? Because you have to be able to peel back so many layers of the onion, it sounds like.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Having gone through that internally with yourself, it's a very sobering thing, right? When you realize that, like, oh my gosh, I might have been coming at this the whole wrong way. But do you find that what you're doing now is far more effective?
Oh, yes. Yes. And absolutely. I know, like, in going through my program and learning lots of different ways how we're not supposed to practice. I sometimes I can tell clients, like, I can relate. I know exactly what that feeling is like. And this is what has kind of helped me. And so when I humanize myself, which before I didn't,
right,
like, it is so impactful, because I understand the exhaustion, where before I'm like, okay, so what did you do this week to try to practice that? Nothing. And then it's like, oh, so there's some resistance in therapy.
right.
So let's talk about the resistance. Well, why are they resisting? Let's explore that, and let's get to that before we can start putting some goals in with someone that might not reach that goal.
Absolutely. So, is this the natural path for therapists? Like, nothing beats experience, right? But you also can't systemize experience. So the governing bodies that be, wherever you get your certificates, your papers, your degrees from, right?
Yeah.
Like, they can't teach you what life can teach you. So do you find that most therapists go on this natural kind of sequence of things in an evolution of their practice?
So my field is kind of unique in the sense that we all practice differently. I may not know how anyone practices. I do know that a lot of practitioners will go off of different theories and are very good at that, and they specialize in that. But if the clients don't respond to certain theories or certain practices, then they're not going to get very far, or they can only go so far. So what I do may not work for someone who's coming in for OCD, right? Because that's more compulsions related, and yes, it's anxiety related, but I might not be as effective as somebody who specializes in that. So I think we all practice very differently, and what somebody might be looking for someone who specializes in, a mood disorder or things like that are much, the symptoms are more serious. So I don't know. I think we all bring certain positives, definitely. And then with the way that we practice, like it just, the bonding and relationships are different.
Very good. Well, before we bring this to a close, I'm sure that we have listeners that would love to know how to work with you. We all got brokenness and issues, right? And I believe that you're here sitting in that chair to go connect with some of our audience. Why don't you tell them where they can find you, both remotely as well as in person here in Bakersfield? Here's your plug.
Okay. So right now I'm doing virtual therapy, and my phone number, if you would like to contact and get an appointment with me and see if we are a good fit, my phone number is 661-282-7449. And my email address is gbillson, G as in Gina, B as in boy, ILLSON @gmail.com. You can send me an email and we can go from there.
Gina, you've been incredible, dude. That wasn't bad, was it?
No.
No need to be nervous. Part 2 is coming, okay? Guys, as always, I am your host, Blake Bernard. You can find me at the gym page, grindhouse_SC, or email me at blake@grindhousegym.com for any of your training needs. Until next time, this has been the Train to Win podcast. Hail strength.